You ready? You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. The most impressed with was the way you filmed everything at night, because I know what a pain in the ass it is to film in general, let alone at night, and making sure your lighting is good, but that you're still getting the tone and the setting right. What was the hardest part about? Was that the hardest stuff to shoot as far as like the film itself, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few tricky things. We filmed a lot at night. Obviously, not the whole film. There's a lot in the day, but I wanted my brief in the grade to work backwards was I want cold, stark days. We shot this in North Wales in England in January. I
Oh,
want
geez.
cold, stark days. It's cold, man. And I
Yeah.
want and I want warm, firelit nights, which the Americans do beautifully well around campfires and the whole thing. And we've got a real atmosphere of it over here. What I wanted from the nights, and by the way, we spent the first week in January just avoiding the snow because we knew for the next 2 weeks of filming there wouldn't be any snow. So that was interesting. But it worked. But still, but what I wanted the atmosphere of a northern British, uber northern, going up to Scotland's above England. So when you go up to the Scottish borders or into Scotland, there's that culture. The Stoics are from Scotland, kind of a Scotland, Norwegian, North Sea type thing, going towards Europe. So I wanted that atmosphere of what we call over here the Yorkshire Moors, which is Yorkshire's like a county here, and it's akin to American Werewolf in London.
Of course, yeah.
Sure. So we've got the mist, we've got the low light, we've got the moonlight, and I wanted just natural light. So don't worry. I said to the director of photography, and he was great, Gary Rogers. I said, look, Gary, don't worry about making this look beautiful. It looks great, by the way,
It
but it
does.
isn't what it looks like. It's how the audience feel about it. So I want
Okay.
candles and fire, actual fire, like a fire drum, like guys on the picket line, they're on strike, they're just keeping warm on the docks. It's that type of thing. Fire drums, campfires, and we lit it with the fire. So we didn't have like, hey audience, there's a candle and there's a fire. So well. There's a huge 5K back there or something, half a
Yeah.
mile away. No, we lit it with fire, with just a supplement of one soft moonlight or one soft warm light. So for nights, it worked, and with the because we were very lucky in North Wales at the time, the wind was low, so the mist would just come in and it would just hang. So there's a couple of great fireside scenes, landscape scenes where the mist just hangs and you just feel like.
Yeah.
And we barely started post production where Hunter we had owls, and I love the scream. You can Google this. Google the scream of a female fox at night. It's incredible. It's haunting.
That's so
And we
random.
and we had that a couple of times, and it just let you know you're away from the city. It's the mercenaries versus this man. They're away from the city. We had the odd wolf howl that works just distant so well. We don't have wolves in England. You have them in the States. We have them in mainland Europe, but there's a wolf in this film somewhere. But yeah, so
Yeah.
the real thing about shooting at night. I've been a first assistant director since 1995, and I've directed a few things, but this is my first feature film.
Yeah.
And the main thing you need at night is morale, because it's
Mm.
cold and people get tired. And even if their body clock is on that kind of like, well, I've been shooting for X weeks from 1 in the afternoon till midnight, even if they're used to it, their primeval instinct says, I should be wrapped up somewhere safe, not out here in the woods, standing around a
Shooting this.
fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, shooting these guys, killing each other. Yeah, while having fireside chats. So, but we had a real mixture of younger people and more older hands like me, and it meshed well. It meshed well, and we're very lucky. So,
What was the shooting schedule like? Like how long was the shoot?
right. So the shooting schedule was 17 days. Um,
Damn,
and they
that's
weren't.
quick.
Yeah, I mean, over here we have kind of a standard working day, which is in England, which is 10+1, which means 10 hours on camera, 1 hour lunch. But
Okay.
we had generally 9 hour days, a continuous day, which means you only stop for 20 minutes and you can stagger it. So 17 of those days in general. Again, as a first assistant director, I was scheduling my own film. So I was able to say, and directing it. So therefore, I could schedule it into 16, 17 days and say, will the director make that work? Yes, I will. So you had, so you had the, I mean, I had wonderful lady first aid working as first AD with me, and she was fantastic keeping the whole thing going. But ultimately, we got it all in. I would do 3 biggest scenes a day, and I'd say, right, we've got 3 hours per scene. But the great thing was, Hunter, we had the cast and crew were all together as one. They were all into the material. They were all into the film. They got on with each other, and it worked. It just moved forward. It had momentum. It had morale. And I remember listening to a British director. Forgot the guy's name right now. He did a British TV thriller called Utopia, and there was a quite horrendous scene in that in which it was based on a comic book or a book, and within a comic store, certain people were killed
Oh,
by inhaling poison gas. And the director said in an interview, I shot that first because A, it grabs the studio's attention or the TV company's attention in the rushes, and they can see, you're doing something cool. But also, it gets the crew on board. And I took that lesson to heart. So on the Stoic, one of the first things we shot, 2 big sequences on this particular day, was a guy getting tortured in a cellar or being tested to be a Stoic.
Okay.
Going through the stress position, going through the whole thing. And a guy alone in a field, who was one of the victims of the Stoic, one of the bad guys, with just a flare, a huge red sea flare to illuminate him at night.
Okay, so that was the next scene I was going to ask you about, because the way that you film that, because again, I know you've obviously worked in the business, but for being a first time director, you nail that shit. Like that scene in particular, I was like, oh, the tension in this. Like I think my favorite thing, or one of my favorite things, and I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get this out. Um, the way that each kill is different, and atmospheric. It's almost like its own. I was getting Edge of Darkness vibes as I was watching this. That's what kept constantly uh
Thank you.
running through my head as far as the atmosphere. Because whenever someone gets killed, it's different, but you set it up in a way that you're kind of like, all right, it's coming, but when is it going to happen? And that flare scene in particular, I that might be my favorite scene in the movie. Was that the first scene you shot, or that the second scene you shot, like first day?
It was on the first day. It was the third scene. So we did the torch
Okay.
scene. That we did Mother, who's the matriarchal head of the Stoics. She's the one in charge, and she has 3 phone calls throughout the film. So we did all her phone calls, and she's got this white kind of cap, kind of bonnet, and she had like a black shawl, and then it became more combative. In the night scenes, it became burgundy. Then it was dark red in the final one, where she had quite a combative phone call. So that's the second thing we did. And then, yes, to get to your favourite scene, Hunter, that was the third and final scene we did on day 1.
Okay.
And Jerome Benjamin, great young actor, is in Top Boy over here, which is a thing about, it was a Netflix thing about London gangs, and he played a kind of a guy in a Manchester gang up here in the north of England. The London guys came up to make a buy, and Jerome was in that. And I was actually out with in a bar with Jerome in Manchester, and he got recognised by so many people just for Top Boy. But he really got into that scene, and he understood that scene. And he's walking around in with the flare, and I said, look, I know we have the visual, man. It's the flare. It's you. It's the darkness. Okay, and it's the military jeep or the countryside jeep we just come out of. This is about sound. It's about breathing. It's about the music, and in post we had the music kind of build up, and then when he struck that flare, the whole soundtrack stops,
Hmm.
and then it's just about him, you know, and he did very little. He did a lot by doing very little. He wasn't kind of, oh, I'm scared. He was kind of Benjamin. I mean, you've seen the clips, you've seen his eyes.
Yeah.
He's got incredibly beautiful, expressive eyes, and he worked it, and he did a great job. And then when the Stoic jumps on him, yeah. But thank you for what you said about the different kill, because that informs the thing about the Stoics is that they are of almost Middle Ages, really. They go back. One character, Jason Fleming's character, the guy from Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, Jason calls them 17th century psychopaths because they're from that era. Now, I know we had the musket and everything in the 10th century, 12th century rather, but, or later, actually, sorry. But these guys are not allowed to use mechanical weapons. So they have to, because it's to them, that's guns, you know, if you're in the military, you're no coward, you've got to use a gun, but to them, a gun is too easy. So if you're going to kill someone, use your hands, be physically invested, you know? And so they have to use whatever's around, or they can use a knife. But if you're going to kill someone, you better own that. You better be upfront and do it. You know, you can't do it from 100 yards away. You know,
There's an intimacy to the kills that I thought was very surprising in the best way. Because to your point, I was kind of sitting here, I was like, man, I was like, he hasn't used a gun. And then like as the film goes on, it's like, okay, this is an actual. And what I really like about this, because I was sitting there like the first 20 minutes, like, okay, like I'm liking this, but I like the way you slowly start to bring in more like mythology to the Stoics. I think you maximize your runtime really well, because once you kind of set the table in the first 20 minutes, I think you're still getting a lot of action, a lot of drama, but you're still sprinkling in that mythology in the background, but then you bring it to the forefront when needed. So I think you're bouncing, quite frankly, quite a few plates, but I think you do an incredible job of doing it. So props to you on that. Um, I know you wrote
thank
this
you.
as well. So what was that process like? Was there ever any conversation of like, I'm not gonna direct this, or as you're writing this, were you just like, yep, I have to direct this? Like,
Uh, Good question. Very good question. For me, writing and directing is writing, acting is writing, of a sense, and it just meshed together. No, there was never a question of. I mean, myself and Scott Wright, who plays the Stoic, we kind of initiated the whole project. That we've known each other for 4 years, and we initiated the whole thing together. And it was always he was going to play whoever was going to be the star of whatever film, and I was going to write and direct. So I think it came from there. It was just assumed, but also I had to direct it also, I think, because it wasn't a conscious decision, but Stoicism has always been part of my life. Not in a kind of, I mean, over there you've got in the States Stoic Week, and you've got Ryan Holiday, who's a YouTuber, does a lot of Stoic daily
yeah.
podcasts, does a great job. And I think that I grew up with Stoicism so far as my father, he was well, still alive, but he was a plasterer, on, plastered walls, worked on construction sites. And then he went into training young men coming up into construction. But what he used to say to me a couple of times, he just mentioned Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics as I was growing up in North Manchester. And I can almost play those recordings of him mentioning it back in my head. I remember the intonation of the way he spoke. And it just stayed with me. It wasn't a big deal in the house. There weren't posters of Marcus Aurelius everywhere as Seneca. But when I was 34, I was in an accident and I actually shattered 4 vertebrae in my spine.
Oh shit.
And I was, yeah, I was like, yeah, that's what I said. And I was
Yeah,
laid
yeah, I
up.
would imagine. Jesus.
And I was, I mean, I would only laugh at my own misfortune. Nobody else's in that sense. But I was laid up in a spinal unit, and my dad came in and he visited me a couple of times. And then on the third occasion, I think it was, he went, "There you go." He gave me a book, and it was Marcus Aurelius Meditations, and it was his philosophy, and it was Stoicism.
Mm,
And it had he'd written in the front cover and the whole thing, and I was kind of wow. And interestingly enough, when I was preparing for this podcast, I pulled that book just because I wanted to kind of go, yeah, I have got a copy. Yeah, I could say that in good faith. And I opened it up, and it was my dad had written an inscription, and he'd given it to me in hospital. I remember him giving me a book. I didn't remember it was that book, and he
that's
would give me,
wild.
but he gave me, yeah, and I read through it, and it was that thing whereby, okay, you broke your back. Well done for not thrashing around and creating any actual condition, you know, within the actual nerves themselves, and you will now not move for 5 months.
Wow.
So yeah, so that was kind of my my real stoic experience, whereby and look, man, you know, we know people in real life work with disabled children, live with disabled children, you name it. That's stoicism. That's stoicism. You know, I had a
Yeah.
taste of having to just kind of galvanize myself. You know, so you know, guys get injured in war, whatever, and they've got to kick in. And I had that experience, and I thought, and that's always stayed with me. And I think because my dad coupled it with the book itself, it made me conscious of it, conscious of Marcus Aurelius. So when I came to write the film, they're not these, they're more like Amish or Amish Stoics in from the legend of my film, so to speak, this film, rather than Greek Roman philosophers. They're just taking the philosophy, but they have a different, as you say, mythology and infrastructure. They've got the bonnets, and if a Stoic leaves a bonnet, it's a warning. So get out of town
Which I
or
love.
stop doing
I
what.
love that detail, by the way. Just I love the fact he's giving them a chance. Like he's like, you can take the off ramp now and stop being assholes. And they're just like, no, it's one guy. Fuck you. Like I love that he gives them a chance. So I thought that was a nice detail. But
Oh, thank you, thank you.
uh
But that was the thing, because you could say the Stoic's kind of this Terminator-esque character. He's got his own redemptive arc, but he kind of just goes at them. He's got his belief and he goes at them. He's affronted by these soft-spoiled Westerners. You've got roof over your head, you've got roof over your head, you've got food, you've got warmth, and you're still stabbing each other in the back. And this is what, and you're abusing these women, you're abusing other people all the time, you're trading people, and that's what affronts him. And the Stoics are smugglers, but they won't smuggle people, you know?
yeah.
And so it's the fact that he's morally affronted. And I wanted to make something along the lines of whereby the character has a clear moral agenda. It's like Clint Eastwood, Josie Wales, you name it, whereby it's like, you've upset me and I'll turn you the cheek once. Right, that's it. I'm upset now. My mule's upset. I'm upset. You're dead. You know?
I love how to your point talking about the morality, how these are bad people. These are really shitty people that we're introduced to. And I get frustrated with directors and writers when they kind of shy away from that. Like I feel like almost there's become this movement that every villain needs to be like redeemed. And I'm kind of old school in the way that sometimes I just want a piece of shit to be a piece of shit. Like I don't need them to, like make this 180. It's like, no, you're in this, stay in this. And the men that you introduce here are so vile and are like almost proud of how vile they are. And I love that once the Stoic is introduced, how very much they're like, oh, whatever, like who gives a crap. But as things ramp up and as the walls start to close in, that paranoia ramps up, which goes along with the tension that you're building and the score and everything. Like I think everything just works so well in tandem as the film goes on. Um, I haven't mentioned them yet, and I would be a horrendous interviewer if I didn't. The women in here, I think it's Mia Vore, and I think it's
Yeah.
Anka Evans, I believe I say it. Um,
Yeah, Anchor is Polish. Yeah.
they were fantastic in this, and they have to carry a lot of the emotional weight of this film. Talk to me about writing their characters, particularly in directing them, because I haven't seen them in anything, but I was like, I would love to watch them in anything else because I thought they were fantastic in this.
Thank you, thank you. They were great. That was really interesting because I remember when we tried to cast the women. Remember, one actress I wanted in particular said, "Oh, I don't play victims." I'm like, they're not a victim. They're victims of
No,
circumstance, but they're not
yeah,
victims. Thank you, Hunter. Thank you for noticing that. And for me, the 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 Stoic recognizes the women, particularly Jane, that's Mia Vore, as being Stoic. They are kidnapped by these men, you know, and the men are kind of, the mercenaries kind of like, oh, what's going on? Da, da, da. I want to do this. I've got my redemptive arc. I'm a complete cad and I'm a complete shit and I'm going to stay that way. The Stoics, who he is. And these women are right in the middle going, well, you guys just sort it out. you know, because it's our lives on the line, quite frankly. And even whether you guys live or die, we're going into slavery. And they, at the beginning, they say, we accept this. You stay with me, I'll stay with you. They say to each other, we hold in this universe, ignore them, block them out, get through this. And I spoke to both women about that idea, that you are each other's strength, you know, and that you've got to back each other up. You're not two singular captives, so to speak. That. And when you face your captors, yes, you are afraid, but your characters are, apart from one scene where there's three guys threatening them in the stable, when they're interrogated, stood outside, have your character act more afraid than they are, so that we can kind of feel. You get me?
Yeah.
Thank you. And Mia's character, who talks about in the past she was kind of a toy, a mule, thrown from drug gang to drug gang. That's a true story. I did some work 2018-19 with the homeless in Manchester, and I met an outreach worker, a lady who told me of her life story, and it was not dissimilar to that.
Oh wow!
Being tossed from Manchester gang to Manchester gang, and that stuck with me. So when Mia's character tells her story in the film, it may sound like a movie tragic story. No, it's not. It's real.
Damn.
You know. So wow. and they just, what I like about the ladies is that I sent a lot of the actors to charity shops to buy their own clothes, and they just bought simple coats. It's nothing sexy. It's nothing, you know, like a bit of thigh or cleavage. It's just like you're wrapped up. You're wrapped up and you stay that way. You don't change a button, you know?
Yeah.
You stay that way. And I think the clothing for me kind of works. They weren't changing clothing. They weren't, you know, there's none of this kind of like a bit shoulder or anything. It's just like you're wrapped up and you just stay insular, you know? And they both did a great job, like you're saying. I think they worked, even though Mia's from, you know, Yorkshire, just over the way, or in North England, and of course Anka's Polish herself. They seem to mesh as a couple. You could do a spin-off film with them.
So I was going to ask you about that. So without getting too spoilery, I will just simply say there is room to potentially explore this world more. Is that something that you would be interested in doing, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I would be interested. Yeah, I think if there's a fan base there, or if people want it, and the right deals there to realize the script properly, absolutely. I think I actually wrote The Lineman in 2020, which is the story. You know, at the end of the film, well, Aurelius is going somewhere at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote, without spoiling it, I wrote the sequel in 2020, then I wrote the Stoic prequel in 2022.
Interesting. Okay.
So his next journey, which is, you know, it's about him and his daughter. It's a very different emotional journey for him, and it deals with mother and his relationship with mother, which isn't as straightforward as it may appear, and with the clan itself. I wrote that in 2020, but that was not very expensive, but it would cost more money to realize. Okay. Whereas with this, I had an idea, Hunter, of this guy who, it was an idea I had 10 years ago. There's a retired gentleman with his wife walking with their granddaughter. They're in the woods, North England. They come across some bad guys. They kill his wife. They take his granddaughter and they beat him up and leave him for dead. So it's a real, you know, Clint Eastwood type old Western. You whip to death at the beginning, you know, and he just survives the night. It's not special forces, this guy. He gets himself together. And I thought, well, we can make that film for not a lot of money. For the budget we've had invested in us, or potentially we're going to have it invested at the time. And then I was kind of like, hold on a minute, why don't I just make him the Stoic and bring that character into it? Mm-hmm. And then that grew. And then we brought Mother into it, and then brought the stoicism into it, the bonnet, the whistle in the night, the whole thing. So it grew to be a Stoic adventure. So really, this is something that's grown of a pre-existing Stoic script, The Lineman. Okay. It's called The Lineman because, you know, it's called The Lineman because he used to work on the telegraph poles. You know, I'm the
Oh,
lineman for Kansas
okay,
City.
gotcha. Okay, not American football. Okay.
No, no. The other American lineman. The other American
Okay.
lineman. Yeah.
Last question I have for you. Potentially. What is the so you mentioned that book that you read, and how much that informed like the story and like gave you ideas and everything. What was the biggest, and I know this is kind of a loaded question, but what's like the biggest moral fable lesson that you took from that book that you were able to incorporate into the film?
I think the book being Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I think it wasn't Marcus Aurelius, but it was Seneca, who's another Stoic. John Malkovich did the film Seneca recently, a few years ago,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and Seneca famously said, which I think Marcus Aurelius also subscribes to. There's probably something like this in his book. I'd have to check. Um, we suffer more in our mind. We suffer more in our imaginations than we do in reality, which means we worry
Hmm.
too much. So it's like, don't worry, don't
Okay.
stress out. Don't imagine what's going to happen. See what does happen. Now, in the film, because we have these egos, we have these social media personas, we have personas here, professional personas. We like to dress in nice clothes, what have you, or we like our houses with old bricks. We have these Western representations of ourselves, which we worry about and we try and maintain. And the Stoic, when he has the guy tied up at the campfire one night, says, "Oh, you Westerners, it's always you. You're always complaining. You're always offended, you know?" And it's that thing like I've taken from the book, from Stoicism classically, to answer your question. And I like to think it's put into the film is the idea that it's never anyone else, is it? It's always you
Yeah.
complaining
Yeah.
about you. You're never complaining on somebody else's behalf. And maybe that's time, and that's always been people in the Western world, in every part of the world. But it's something that strikes me, and it's something I try and temper myself with a lot. I remember I've been working from home today, scheduling a feature film. For me today is like immaterial. I think that's what I'm trying to say, but I didn't want to speak for her, so to speak. So yeah, I think that's the thing is like it shouldn't be about the self. If you live for other people, if you have kids, or you just got a partner you care about, then that's what your life's going to be about, and that's what's going to fulfill you. If your life's about you, then congratulations, you will live and you will die, and you leave.
Yeah.
You
You're
leave
not wrong,
nothing.
but just, yeah, that's some truth for you. It's like,
And I think the Stoics saying that's fine. And look at me, I'm a single guy bouncing around the woods killing people. But at the same time, he's doing it for the sake of others. He's do
yeah.
you know he's acting on behalf of others. And I quite like the fact, and I don't know about yourself, Hunter, that I'm proud of the fact that the film just starts. He's sketching away, he's minding his own business, and then
Yeah. So, okay, okay, I lied. I have one more question. So okay, actually two of them. One, did Scott or you, did either of you do the bird drawing in his book? Or did
that's incredible.
because I thought that was gorgeous. Like when I saw it, I was like, wow. I was like, that's really cool. I was like, who did that? So yeah, I'm curious. Like,
Well, that's by my bed, and that's because my girlfriend drew that.
wow. Okay, tell her props on that because I thought that was I thought the line work especially I thought was pristine. Please
She,
tell.
no,
Yeah.
thank you so much. She excelled in art at A level, which over here is kind of ages 16 to 18. Still does, but she works in the care industry. She's an amazing cook, multi-talented, makes me sick. But and she drew three stages. So said, look, do the outer line for the beginning of the film, and then Scott just needed to obviously pretend to fill in the blanks, and then do one intermediate and then one final one. So when the So what happens to the picture at the end? No
Yeah.
spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers.
There was only one.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay.
There's only one copy, one take.
I love that. Cause yeah, that was just something I was like, I've been asking about that. All right. And then this is my last question, I promise. After establishing this world, um, after, doing this feature film, what is the biggest, how do I want to phrase this? What is the biggest lesson that you took away as an artist after this film? This being your first one, what's the biggest lesson that you took away?
I think what I took away was to trust other people.
Mm,
So, get the right people on board and trust them. So if you take somebody like, for example, Rocky Boy Williams, Rocky's done very small parts in things like Guy Ritchie's Wrath of Man, Angel Has Fallen, and with Gerard Butler. And Rocky has this character. He's the leader of the mercenaries, and he has the redemptive arc. So he's the one guy who he has his doubts at the beginning. We can kind of see that, and he was great because every week he would call me and go, "Listen, just tell me about this. Tell me about the bonnet. It's like a beret. Yeah, it's like a beret, military beret. Right, I got it. I know I'm going to handle it." And he would ask me questions, and I took that approach with the rest of the cast as well. Is I would just answer questions, give them a brief, and let the cast think about it. That's it. I would say, hey, you've all got to handle an M16 rifle, most of you. Here's a Vietnam American military training video on how to handle a rifle. Watch it.
damn.
I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to bore you. We're not going to have a read through. We're not going to sit down and talk about our feelings. You guys have life experience. You have life experience. Go and harness that life experience. I want to see it on screen.
Okay.
That's as actors, as artists. So as an artist myself, if you want to call me an artist, thank you. I learned that was a good way forward. I also learned to trust your instincts with your writing, with the bonnet and the whole thing. I don't know what the greater public are going to make of that, and that or the whole world of the Stoics. But I just thought I'm just going to go with this,
Yeah.
And and it's not some, it's interesting for me in this time of, gender and transgender and the whole thing. You got this guy with a bonnet, and it's like, that's not what we're talking about. We're just saying, hey, these guys wear bonnets. Men used to knit and
Yeah.
make and wear bonnets back in the day. It's practical, So, let's see what the reaction to that is. I'm sure it'll be a positive one. I think
I understand.
it'll be great. Thank you. But I think it's just like, go with your instincts. And what I did with the Stoic was, as I was giving more and more actors, and certainly Neil Jones, our executive producer, and his wife Jennifer Chippendale, also producer, and they read the script at first, and their questions were not the questions I expected, and they were interesting questions. And I thought, oh, you're going to pick me up on the bonnets or the whistle or the Stoics? No. Everyone just went with it. So I think I'm just trying to say, trust yourself, trust people. I think that's what I learned, really.
I love that, and I think the product of this film is something that audiences are really going to enjoy. Susan is yelling at me to wrap this up, so so uh, Jon, sir, this was so delightful, and this is like such a great start to my week. So thank you so much for stopping by. I can't wait for the sequel. I can't wait to see what else you do. If you could please tell audiences before I let you go, where they can see the film and where they can find you if you have social media before I let you go.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. So I'm a Jonathan Eckersley on social media, generally on Facebook, but I know that it will be out in the US streaming on the 18th, which is this Friday, 18th
Nice.
of October. And then in the UK, it starts 4th of November on DVD sales, retail, Amazon, and Apple streaming. And then after that, it will be Japan, Australia, South America, New Zealand, former Yugoslavia, some Soviet states, but not Russia itself, for obvious reasons. Japan, did I say? Spain? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Archstone Entertainment are selling it, and Savannah doing the brilliant job also. So very, very flattered and pleased to be embraced like this by yourself, by Susan, by the distributors. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited for people to see this. Like I said, Jonathan, I can't wait to see what you do moving forward, sir. Seriously, thank you again for making the time, and I hope you take care of yourself, right?
Hunter, thank you so much. That's fantastic.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir. You take care.
Thank you.